Hi everyone, my name is Oge and welcome back to my channel. So this is part 2 of a 2-part series that I've been doing on different hair care practices, styles, and just different things that have popped up in the media and news regarding Black hair care practices. And so this part 2 is going to be about relaxers. And these videos, I really just wanted to talk more about my experience. I'm referencing the papers that inspired this video, but I didn't want to get too much to the nitty-gritty of the stats or the research, mainly because I do that almost every single day for work, and I didn't want to do it for this video. If I'm being completely honest, I sat down and thought, I'm gonna do a very well-researched, thought out video, really give them the facts. And then I thought about it and I was like, I don't want to do that. I will link the papers down below for anybody who wants to read them. But I was just like, you know what? I don't want to do that because tomorrow morning, that's what I'm gonna be doing at work. And this is my hobby, not my job. But so if you were looking for that, I'm sorry, that's not what this is really going to be about. It's going to be more my experience and also my thoughts, as well as somebody in the medical field who sees patients who have hair disorders, kind of coming from that perspective as well. And so the paper that inspired this video is a paper that came out a few years ago that showed an association between women who use hair relaxers, hair chemical relaxers, and uterine fibroids. And it was a very interesting paper because it was kind of this well-established known fact that Black women get uterine fibroids at higher rates than other ethnicities, races of women. And it was chalked up kind of to genetics, but it wasn't very well understood why that was happening. And then of course, a good majority of Black women have either had a relaxer at some point in their life or are still getting relaxers. I think the stat is as high as like 92% of all Black women in America have had a relaxer at some point in their life. I've had a relaxer for the majority of my life. And so the paper was interesting in finding that there was an increased risk of developing uterine fibroids for anybody who's had a relaxer. I don't quite remember the exact statistics, but I think it was that I don't quite remember the exact statistics if they looked at women who had never had a relaxer compared to women who had had a relaxer and rates of developing uterine fibroids. I think that's what it was, versus like amount and length. I think they also looked at those stats as well to see if you had used a relaxer for longer periods of time, did that affect your rates of developing uterine fibroids as well. And so it was just a very interesting study. And then I did a quick search on different research that's come out and did see that there were a few other papers that came out linking uterine fibroids, uterine cancer, and relaxer use. And so my thoughts on relaxers has also changed since when I was younger. So kind of a brief backstory of my history with relaxers. I got my first relaxer when I was 8 or 9. I remember I was in the 4th grade. And I remember that day so clearly because up until then, I just really wanted a relaxer because that was just the thing you did back then. I grew up in the early 2000s and that was just like the thing, it's that kind of almost felt like it marked your journey into womanhood, if that makes sense. So once you get that relaxer, it's like, yes, you're like grown, you can shake your hair everywhere. That was the epitome of just womanhood to me. And so I was so excited when my mom said, you're gonna get a relaxer. I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. And I remember that I didn't really like how it looked on me. It was very flat and I just didn't think it suited me very well. But I remember walking into school and my teacher saying that I looked so good and she loved my new hair. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, I guess it does look good because I'm getting this external validation. And growing up, that's kind of just how I felt about it. In the back of my head, I was always think, I don't think this really suits me very well, but other people said that they liked it, and this is what all the other women around me were doing, and so I guess this is just what you do. And then I kind of played and went back and forth with going natural, but it was hard because I didn't get very much support. Again, at that time, most of the women around me were not natural, and I remember just thinking, I don't really know what to do with my hair if I do go natural, and I hadn't yet found the natural hair community on YouTube, so I was just really scared of going natural and then just not knowing what to do with my hair, and then having to go to picture day and just, look in a mess, which honestly, looking back at it, it doesn't really even matter because I don't look at any of those pictures, and even some of them I still looked a mess, you know. With my relaxed hair, I still looked a mess. So yeah. And my last relaxer was like full-blown relaxer was my summer of my freshman year. So right as I was going into sophomore year of undergrad, I decided to do a big chop, asked my mom to cut off my hair, had like the teeny weeny afro. And even though it looked different, I was really excited. I think I was excited about the possibilities of knowing that I was no longer going to be tied to somebody's salon chair, that I wasn't going to have to deal with the chemical burns. I would get such bad chemical burns whenever I got a relaxer, and it was very traumatizing because I remember younger me just didn't know how to speak up for herself. And so I would be sitting in the chair as the back of my scalp was on fire. And I remember telling my stylist, hey, like this is really, really burning. And she would just say, no, you have to leave it like that or it's not gonna set, and then you're just not gonna have like completely straight hair. And I remember just being in so much pain, and then the days afterwards having just bloody scabs in my scalp. And again, thinking, I guess this is what you have to do, like beauty is pain. And I remember feeling so much relief when I decided to not relax my hair anymore, that I wouldn't have to go through that again. And I would no longer have bloody scabs all over my scalp. To this day, the back of my hair does not grow. I think I've killed all the hair follicles back there from years of just burning them. Like I definitely was giving myself like second-degree burns from the chemical relaxer, which again is like a crazy concept to think of putting something on your scalp that is eating through your flesh. And so that was my last time I got a relaxer, and then went on this whole natural hair journey. And I will say, once I got to medical school, so I think about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I decided to get a texturizer. And so I did the S-Curl texturizer, and basically it was because we are supposed to keep our hair pulled back, and you know, it makes sense, like when we're in the hospital in surgery, you want to be able to pull your hair back. And I could not pull my hair back a lot of times because it was just so kinky curly, and I just could not get it to slick back. And even when I would wet it and then try to pull it back, it would just be so tough. Now I realize it's because my hair was not properly moisturized. I didn't realize that at the time. So I thought, you know, I'm just gonna get a texturizer. It'll loosen up the curl pattern just so that I can pull it back so that it can be more manageable. And so I did an at-home texturizer. I didn't get close to my scalp, but the initial look, I really liked it. It was the first time that my hair really hung down. I was able to move it around, and it just was very full still. And yeah, I really loved it. I really loved how it looked, and I was excited about it. And I thought, you know what, I'll just do this. This isn't as bad as a relaxer. I can do it at home. It'll be fine. And so I did that probably up until like, I think the last time was that I got one was July of 2023. So 2 years ago, like a year and a half ago, a little over a year and a half ago was the last time I texturized my hair. And I'm not gonna lie, in this past year and a half, I have contemplated getting a texturizer again. I've put the S-Curl texturizer in my Amazon cart. I've driven over to Walgreens to think about picking up a box, because I think, again, to me wanting to just have the hair that kind of just like hangs, and it would still be my curl pattern but requires less work and products. And again, I think the idea of just like being able to pull my hair back, and I'm gonna be honest, a lot of times I do think about that, but when I think about my hair goals, I know that a texturizer, relaxer, chemicals is not in my plan for hair goals, mainly for a few different reasons. One being the fact that at the end of the day, these are chemicals, and they do have very concerning chemicals and formulations. And I think different from synthetic braiding hair, relaxers, a lot of times because the nature of it, it can eat through your skin. And that means that it has the potential to actually penetrate deeper into the skin, get into the bloodstream, and affect have a systemic effect. And I think that scares me. I think also the fact that a lot of times with these relaxers and chemicals, I don't really know all the ingredients that are in them. And again, the fact that I have to leave it on my scalp, and yeah, you put like the grease and whatever, but at the end of the day, we all know that it still kind of burns through the scalp a little bit, you know, like And even when I was getting it professionally done, when I was doing it myself, like it would still kind of burn through the scalp a little bit. And then I think just the idea of putting something on my scalp and close to my brain that is breaking down bonds, like we are bonds, and this chemical is eating through those bonds. And I was just like, that's a little scary for me. That's a little like out of my comfort zone. When I really take a step back and thought about that, I was just like, that's a little, like the fact that it's breaking through bonds, I just don't really want to continue that long term. And then I think definitely with these papers, it does make me think like what else these chemicals are doing. And they have formaldehyde in them, and the previous ones had lye, and just all these things that are in these chemicals. And it's not just relaxers, because I hate the fact that relaxers get demonized when there's other chemicals that we use all the time. And I think about those too. I think about, gel nail polish and UV lamps that we use for nail curing. And I think about I can think about the glue that was used for my fake lashes. I think about coloring, like dye for your hair. I do think about all these different chemicals and different things that I put on my body, I inhale, and just being more conscientious about those things. And so when I thought about, what do I actually want out of life, and just living a life that makes sense and taking care of my body, relaxers just didn't have a place in that. I think also another thing was that, if I'm being honest, I still did not fully accept my texture. And it was hard for me, because a lot of times my reasons for wanting to relax my hair is because I didn't appreciate the hair texture that I naturally have. And yes, I can say, it's because I like a certain length on me. And I'm like, yeah, while that's true, there's ways to style my hair at the length that I have it currently that can help it, that can still look good on me. I can't just wash my hair, get out, not style it, and then be unhappy with the results, that sort of thing. And so I think, I had to kind of take a step back and think, am I using relaxers because I dislike my hair texture? And I just really wanted to accept myself and accept just who I am as a person without taking these drastic changes to make myself look different. And I go back and forth with that. It's hard because, again, like I said, I still have days where I like, let me put the S-Curl texturizer in the cart and buy it because I'm done with this sort of thing. But yeah, I think for me, relaxers just don't make sense. I have a really sensitive scalp, and it just made things just really bad. Also, I guess I forgot to say, with my journey with the texturizer, then I was consistently doing it. I noticed during the third or fourth time that I did it, I was losing a lot of hair, like shedding lots and lots of hair, and that my hair looked very thin. I also was straightening my hair during that time, but I think it's because I wasn't completely getting the texturizer out of my head, and so I was over processing my hair. It was also really hard not to reprocess certain sections. And yeah, I could have gone to a stylist, but I think for me, where I am, I just don't like being tied to any chair. And it's hard because I move around a lot. And so I had a stylist back when I was in New York that I really liked, but then they went out of business. And so I didn't want to go through having to find another stylist, especially since, again, I move so much. It's been hard to find a stylist that I really like, that I trust. And I've been burned before. So I'm just like, I don't know if I want to play around with that. But yeah, I think with relaxers, I was just kind of like, no. And these papers, again, I think with all these papers that came out, in the back of my head, I always kind of knew these different things are not good for you. I think I wasn't going in blind thinking, oh yeah, relaxers have no damage, they're not causing damage, it's not harmful. So it's not necessarily new information, but I think for me, it did kind of push me towards feeling better about not using relaxers and being more resolute in that decision. And this is not to say for anybody who does use relaxers that that's a bad thing. I think everyone should do what they want to their hair. I think especially as somebody who did and still does have a lot of insecurities around my hair, I understand anybody who will continue to relax your hair, because yeah, when my hair was relaxed, even though it didn't quite suit me, I knew what it was gonna look like in the morning. Versus with my natural hair, a lot of times I don't know what it's gonna look like. You know, like you do everything and you wake up the next morning and it just looks not what you expected, and it looks different than the last time when you did the exact same thing with the exact same products. And that's a lot, you know, especially when you want your hair to look a specific way. And so I get it. I don't want this video to feel like it's shaming anybody who wants to continue relaxing their hair. And even for my previous video, anybody who is continuing to use braids all the time and stays in braids, I don't want it to feel like it's shaming anybody. I think for me personally, I do want to get to a point where I am just living with my natural hair and not adding anything to it and not changing it in any way. But it's a growing process. But yeah, so that's just like my thoughts on relaxers and the papers that came out. This wasn't a very medical-y type video. It's more just my thoughts and opinions. So yeah, let me know down below if any of you all are going to continue using relaxers, if these papers changed your ideas on relaxers, any sort of like chemical treatments. I've never done a keratin treatment. I've thought about it, but then I heard that it does change your curl pattern, and I'm just like, you know, I don't want to do that. And again, I don't like being tied to anybody's chair. Also, I'm a little cheap. So yeah, but yeah, let me know down below if you've ever done any sort of chemical processing, if you've bleached your hair, if you've done keratin treatments, if you still get relaxers, texturizers, if you're considering any of them, if you're like, nah, I don't want to do any of that. Let me know about down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. But yeah, until next time, bye.